So I'm Martin Schmalzried. I'm a Policy and Advocacy Manager at COFACE Families Europe. And amongst all my responsibilities, one of them is child online safety and digitalization and the internet and all of that stuff. So we were part of the initial POSCON Positive Content Online project as external experts because obviously for families it's really important to find good quality positive content online. And so we advised on the criteria to define what positive content is, and also in selecting the winners of the initial POSCON competition and contest. So there are three main ways to go about it. The first one is to actually go and look at the objective, it's kind of a more formal way. So go look at the objective criteria that were defined in the POSCON project, which you can download for free. Or you can also try to find an independent expert or an expert organization, independent and trusted, that is recognized by their peers and that do curate positive content. Or you can just go for the wisdom of the crowd and go and trying to seek what other parents say about content, and there are sometimes community of parents that organize, and you can find it via that way. I feel we've made tremendous advances in the research around digitalization technology. Back in the days, parents were kind of left alone to their own devices to find out when they should start watching television or have their kids watch television, what is good for their children. I think now there's some more of a consensus between researchers in neurosciences, psychology, child development, to say that before the age of 2, screens may not be such a good idea, and then gradually introduce them, and also a lot of advice on how to manage their involvement with screens, especially the fact of transitioning out of screens when you watch a small short video. It actually stimulates the child so much, it creates so much pleasure, that actually taking it away afterwards and saying, okay, that's it, it almost creates pain, physical pain in their brains. So you have to find a way to kind of make a smooth transition out of the screens, like for instance, asking them questions about what they saw, how did you like it, what happened, and have them being engaged intellectually in describing what happened, and then they kind of take their minds off of it, and there's a smooth transition between their shot of the rush of opioids and all kinds of chemical reactions in their bodies, and transitioning out of screens back into another activity and avoiding the whole rage fit. Then there's also, I find there's also ways to kind of transition or make a link between the traditional important things that are manual and analog, like for instance cursive writing, which is showed to be very important for developing fine motor skills and plenty of other benefits, and technology. We could, for instance, develop brandless e-readers, which are very good for the eyes. You have no problem. It's the same as looking at paper. You can have them being tactile with a stylus, so you can still conserve the handwriting and handwritten notes. And you could also get rid of some of the books that weigh down the school bags, so it's healthier for children. So there are ways to really combine technology with some more traditional learning to make a best experience overall, where it's not bad for the eyes, not bad for anything. You take the best of the two worlds and you bring them together. It's just about finding the strategy that works for you. So there's just so much there online. Obviously, you can start with finding those repositories, amongst which there's the Positive Content Online platform, where you have plenty of curated content, the Better Internet for Kids portal. That's one of them. Then there are a lot of other organizations that provide the same kind of service, amongst which some of our members, they also in the national language have repositories of positive content online for families and for kids. Then you have the option of finding an independent expert in your language, in your country. You also have the option of finding platforms where parents gather together in communities. Some of our members did provide that kind of service, notably in France, where they provide a platform where parents review in a very formal way different content, and they have organized communities of 10 or more parents where they discuss and they provide their feedback on games and they rate them. So that's a really good way to sort of formalize it and to avoid the traps of having manipulated reviews or bot reviews. That is a big issue of trust. But I mean, finding independent reviews is something really important, and there are certain websites like Trustpilot, I think, or Trusted Reviews, where you have this kind of curation of reviews and making sure they're genuine, or even just going on certain curated platforms that are professionally curated, like Netflix or whatever, where they do have professionals rating content and organizing it. But ultimately, it's finding a strategy that works for you in terms of the structure and the method and the approach, and then following that through. Plenty of information is out there, so it's just about whether children are playing it. And of course there are trends, like there was Minecraft before, now it's more Fortnite, but it moved to something else, obviously. But there's still plenty out there. For instance, in VR, there is BBC Earth, where you can explore the world. It's just an amazing immersive experience. You have Incel, which allows you to look at the body from the inside, see how it works, with the cells in the body and everything. And then you have Tilt Brush, which is a Google app, which allows you to paint in 3D. It's just amazing. Then there's also Minecraft, which is being ported to augmented reality, where you can play on your coffee table at home or on your dinner table at home as opposed to on your computer screen. So that may also provide much more interactive experience for children and revive the whole Minecraft trend. But there's just plenty out there, and you need to just look for it. So one great thing is that VR continued this trend of using your physical body and actual motion to play video games. It's not just your thumbs playing. That was started by the Nintendo Wii, where you had to do physical gestures, and this is now pushed even further with games like Beat Saber, which is terrific. And it's almost like doing fitness or aerobic, in front of the screen. So finally you have a match between this digital kind of thing where people think that you're just sitting and being, immobile and doing nothing, whereas you can really have like a physical shape up. There's also the benefit of actually having real social interactions, or kind of real. It's getting more and more realistic in the sense that when you put your VR headset on, if you can actually map your face, on an avatar which mimics your facial expressions, that could really enhance the kind of feeling of having real social interactions with people, whereas, we're on the chat, it's kind of artificial. And there's also this added benefit of empathy, because since you have also some of the gestures, the physical motions, the body language, and the emotions that are being transmitted through the facial expressions, you have the possibility of really understanding, if your comment or you're hurting someone or you're saying something out of place, like in the real world. Whereas on the chat, when you say something, you forget to put a smiley, people don't understand it's a joke, and then they take it badly. And there's all this chain reaction of it can really go badly very quickly. Whereas in VR you have that. And I think Rec Room is one app which allows you to do that, like just interact with people in a VR setting, play games with them, discuss, chat. I think that's one of the first iterations, and then it's going to, of course, develop. And ultimately, I think we're going to move towards something more realistic, more social, and so parents won't be able to say you're on your computer screen or whatever, you're not interacting with people. You can actually do it and learn valuable, real social skills. Now, obviously, VR is a double-edged sword, like everything. It can enhance empathy. It can also diminish empathy if you let your child play ultra-violent video games which are not suited for his age or her age. That may actually escalate, or especially unsupervised. On the plus side, there's just so much information out there by technologies. Parents, the key word here is involvement. They really need to be involved. And there's just, if you want to know information about anything, about a headset, about a game, you just type it on your favorite search engine, and you have plenty of reviewers that talk about it, talk about the privacy aspects, talk about the violence aspects, show you how the game works, how it looks like, what the interactions look like. What we're most worried about as an organization is the whole trend that business models are now focused on advertising, especially. Be it games or even online content. And advertising, especially targeted advertising, harnesses plenty of data, needs plenty of data, which poses great threats towards privacy, towards data protection violation. And especially it also shapes the content itself, which is geared towards being addictive, having this clickbaiting kind of strategies to make sure that people click and are exposed to the ad, and then the content is crap. But it doesn't matter because they've been exposed to the ad, and so the money is made. I think that's a real problem. There's not really yet a business model that remunerates positive content or quality content in a fair way that has been really thought through in order to actually yield that kind of result. And so the same applies to video games. For instance, you have the whole problem today of loot boxes or freemium, free-to-play content. And in some cases, when you have a child that is not really aware of money management and how the system works, paying by little 0.01 cents or whatever for tiny little bits of content that can quickly mushroom to bills of 100 or more euros. So we don't find that business model very transparent, very fair, and we really would like to see developers and even the community try to find more fair business models for developers. Now, with regards to the GDPR, there is also progress made, of course, but there are certain challenges that are not really covered to the extent that they should in the GDPR that are going to be faced by all users of the internet in the future, especially on the automated decision-making, the algorithms, the so-called artificial intelligence, which is just very sophisticated algorithms. I find that is quite a weakness in the GDPR in terms of just saying that people can have that explained to them when the creators of those algorithms don't even know how to explain them, So there's a certain inconsistencies there, and it really poses many dangers in terms of manipulation, exclusion, plenty of different things. Then there's also the whole problem of consent, which we don't like as a strategy. It's kind of pushing the responsibility back on the consumer. We would very much rather like to have a sort of a safe environment by default, especially for children. So in that sense, we would have liked to have a law that says that anybody below 16, to avoid the whole consent issue, their data is simply not collected, only for purposes of moderation and keeping them safe, like if there's some harmful content there. And just not use their data at all for advertising purposes or all other purposes, which means that basically you'd be socializing the cost of using social media until you're 16. You're basically not generating profit for the platform, and then from 16 onwards you are. That would have been the correct way about it, but of course that means a drop in profit of 25-30% for those platforms, so it's probably not acceptable. But I think that would have been the right approach if you want to make sure that children are in a safe environment where their data is not exploited, where they are not all these dangers around data protection and all these things. It all boils down to trust, actually. So if you're not present as a parent in their early ages and follow their development, play with them, play video games with them, especially, that's really, really important, read books, all of these things, then once they're older, they might not have the reflex of actually discussing this with you or engaging with you in these kind of activities. And then you kind of lose touch and you don't have the opportunity to discuss or hear your child's opinion. And even when they reach an age where they're teenagers, if you've built that kind of trust, it doesn't mean that you'll always be engaged with them, but if they have a problem, if they have a pressing question, if something happened to them, if they're traumatized by anything, then they may not have this barrier or this reticence or feeling uneasy talking with you about it and discussing it or seeking your opinion on certain things when they decide they need it. So it's all about building this trust from an early age. And of course, that requires certain policies to be put in place because, of course, if you're working from 8 to 7, in the evening, then you only get to see your kids to kiss them goodnight, and that's really a terrible development in our modern societies. So our organization has lobbied for the Work-Life Balance Directive, which is a huge campaign. It's not going as far as we wish, but it's still progress. It's still a move in the right direction. And I think promoting policies which enable to reconcile work and your family life are key in this instance to allow parents to have this time that the quality time that they can spend with their children at an early age, so that later on they have this reflex of actually interacting naturally with their parents and trusting them. So I think we have to enlarge the definition of what can be creative or productive as a family activity. I think family activities as such, if they're done in the right way, can be creative and productive almost regardless of the actual content. So for instance, playing a violent video game with your child and then discussing what happened, saying, how does it feel, and making sure that they understand that while it's a good way to sort of vent off their emotions and just their anger, their physical, energy, to channel their energy, that's a good thing, but make sure that they understand that the real world is different. And, having this interaction might be actually more positive than just sitting your child in front of some very good quality content and then go do something else and use the digital content as a virtual babysitter without the parental engagement and supervision. So in this instance, nothing really replaces the loving care and the involvement of the parent when a child is consuming content. It's better sometimes for them to be there to discuss things. That creates the right environment for the actual positive the positive consequences or whatever to materialize. So yeah, I think we have to enlarge into this definition. It's not specifically related to a content, it's about how you interact with your child. There's a research paper some time ago which showed that many children complain about their parents using their phones too much. And I think that was a big wake-up call in terms of understanding the role model, the parents as role models, and the role they play in setting their own children's habits, online habits, and the way they interact with technology. So if you want your child to have a positive interaction with technology, seek out positive content, have all those reflexes, you have to do it yourself. It's really important for parents to have this positive interaction with technology and to do things themselves, and then that will be taken up by the children afterwards. The advice I gave, I think, is still very relevant. I think last time I didn't mention crowdfunding, which is a great way for parents to really fund the positive content that they think is great. There are plenty of good games that were funded via crowdfunding, like for instance, Shovel Knight or Broken Age. Shovel Knight is really a great retro gaming sort of thing with a lot of humor. I think that would be it's a terrific game. So I invite parents to check it out. And then there are also plenty of independent games that have been done by studios, which you can fund to support independent studios that struggle sometimes. There's Fez, for instance, which is an awesome puzzle game, 2D, 3D kind of experience. That's F-E-Z. And then there is Crypt of the Necromancer, which is also sort of a retro musical game, which is really terrific to play and a lot of fun. And so in the independent kind of sphere, independent video games industry, there's plenty of gems to be found and to be financed, because those are small scale studios that really benefit from that kind of support. So another way to support the creation of positive content online is now the emergence of donation platforms like Patreon or Tipeee, and there are plenty of YouTube creators or YouTubers and plenty of other content creators that are opening up these accounts because advertising just doesn't pay, or it's not stable enough, or it has dropped significantly, the share of the revenue they get. And here it's a way to support those content creators directly. There's also PayPal donations. There's plenty of ways to donate, and there you're sure that your money actually goes directly towards them and encouraging them to create more of that positive content. Then there is also developments bubbling under the surface in the decentralized web movement and blockchain technology, where maybe in some remote future we'll fund content with cryptocurrencies. And a very sort of a premise to that is the Brave browser. That's Brave as the word brave. And they're using a cryptocurrency called the Basic Attention Token, BAT, where advertisers buy this token to advertise via the Brave browser, and then the actual money that they pay is distributed between consumers that watch that advertisement, so actually remunerated as a consumer for being exposed to advertising and content, and the publisher, the content creator. So you have this kind of new business model emerging, and we'll probably likely see many more of these, be it's already existing on, for instance, music streaming platforms where you're remunerated in cryptocurrency, or even other kind of platforms for video. And that's probably going to explode. And it might actually disintermediate things and allow for people that are creating content to be remunerated directly, and skipping the whole third party that takes the big share of the money. Don't forget to visit the Better Internet for Kids portal, which is one of the portals and one of the ways where you can acquire all these fundamental skills and all these fundamental values to be equipped to navigate the wild web of the future.